win condition. With Janaelle and Will. Welcome to Alternate Win Condition, a Magic the Gathering podcast about everything that has to do with Magic the Gathering. I'm Janaelle, and with me, as always, is Will.
Oh, pod players, your tears are so sweet. Let me drink your tears. Oh my gosh. The whining, the complaining.
Yes, we're talking about the ban list. We will be talking about that this week. We will also be talking about the changes to the standard format. But before we get into that, we are going to be talking about what the fuck we did this week in Magic.
Magic the Gathering. Get the cards, play the game. Hope to win. But as we all know, it's not about winning.
Draft.
Commander.
Trading.
Legacy.
Modern.
Standard.
Tilt.
Table flip.
This Week in Magic starts now.
So, Will, what were you up to this week in Magic?
Well, let's see. Since our last episode, we of course had the pre-releases for Fate Reforged. And learning from my first experience of playing, I played several pre-releases, but figuring out that I really can't do the midnight into the noon pre-release anymore because it only gives me about 5 hours of sleep when all is said and done.
Only.
I decided to play a little bit smarter this time and ended up actually playing the midnight pre-release, which had about 120 some odd people. I came in second place in that one.
Oh wow!
Going 4-0.
Damn.
With a deck that, of course, I got the Jeskai box. I ended up playing Jeskai, and there was a lot of good cards. Even though I didn't get the two cards that I was really looking for in Monastery Mentor or Soulfire Grandmaster, I built sort of a very aggressive three color deck with a couple cards that I think are just really nice in this format as well. With Dragon Bell Monk, with god damn it, I have the card name and I'm trying to think. It's a new card in Fate Reforged. It's a 5/2 that for 4 mana that if you have a instant or sorcery in your graveyard, it has first strike.
Oh.
And first strike and trample, I think, actually. So yeah, it's an uncommon from the set. A really powerful card, a really great blocker who's like, because they can't swing into it unless they either have first strike themselves or a bunch of different stuff. So yeah, that was a very good tournament.
Yeah, sounds like it. Good, congratulations.
Oh, thank you. And then the 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I played in another one again, playing Jeskai. I chose Jeskai for all 3 of mine. Didn't have.
That's variety.
Well, that's it. Well, I wanted the money cards. I was going for.
Yeah.
Well, since I'm playing with at least Monastery Mentor and Modern and Legacy, every one that I opened up in the pre-releases.
Oh fuck yeah! My Jeskai deck needs one more Monastery Mentor, and I'm like,
would have saved me some money, and so.
So expensive, $25 card.
You want to talk about? I almost started off the midnight pre-release being tilted before game 1 even started.
Oh,
I have to talk about this. Okay, so the way that they had us set up at the store is they had us all sitting in people who were playing the exact same clan, just to make it easier to hand out the boxes and be like, just hand them out and be like, okay, here's your box. We were sitting. There was 5 people around me. Of the 5 people around me, 4 of them opened up Soulfire Grandmaster as their promo.
Oh!
And guess who was not one of the 4?
You?
Me.
Yeah.
I know. I got the blue-white legendary dragon. Was it Oja, Soul of Winter, or something like that?
The bullshit one. Yeah.
Yeah. It was like, well, I only cast it once the entire evening, and it actually did a pretty good job because it can slowly. Well,
yeah. All the dragons are gonna wreck in limited. We're not talking limited though.
No. And so, but anyway, going back to the 5 o'clock pre-release again, played Jeskai again. Did not get Soulfire Grandmaster, though I think 2 people around me this time did. Ended up going 0-2 drop. Basically, it was 4 rounds, and you get the same thing. The only way you start earning more packs is if you go 3-1 or better. So at when I lost my first two, I was like, okay, I'm done for the evening. I'll go home.
There's no point
rest.
in staying.
Yeah, go home, rest. Then I played on the Sunday afternoon one. Again, well, the 5 o'clock one, the deck I don't think was terrible. I think the deck was greedy, and that's because I was trying to play Jeskai Splash Green.
Oh.
Because I had a couple good cards like Wild Call in there that I wanted to try out and try to play with. And it just was a terrible idea. And so yeah, trying to go 4 colors when you only have a certain amount of stuff, and you don't even have as many morphs. You don't even have as many morphs as you normally have, because in traditional sealed, where it's going to be, I think, 4 packs of Cons and 2 packs of Fate Reforged, you'll have a lot of morphs to get away with doing 4 or 5 colors. This case, you don't. So it was a bad idea. Then the Sunday one, the third one that I did, it went just kind of. This time I knew the mistake from yesterday, so I said I'm building 3 colors, and whatever my mana base supports, that's what I'm playing. That one was just 0-2. I don't know. I personally don't think I put enough bombs. I tried to play the same type of aggressive strategy that I played on the midnight one Saturday, and it did not work on this one. So for overall on the weekend, I went 4-4, but. And I take pride in the fact that the largest of the pre-releases I did end up going 4-0 and getting second place. So
yeah, you should. That's awesome.
So, and beyond that, just my normal weekly stuff, Legacy, Modern, Standard for FNM. So, yeah, do we want to talk about that? Because that could be interesting.
Sure.
With the Fate Reforged releasing on Friday for FNM, I finally got to play my new deck, and thankfully they had all the cards to let me finish building it.
Oh, so you finished building it with money.
Yeah. In Standard, I'm not playing any white. I'm not playing Monastery Mentor or Soulfire Grandmaster. So those were thankfully the money cards, the really expensive cards I did not need. So, however, I was able to what I'm basically playing is red-green monsters with a very, very small blue splash. Very small. For really
What's the splash for?
Savage Knuckleblade.
Yes.
And Stubborn Denial in the main deck.
Okay.
Because I've always been impressed with Stubborn Denial, just to be like, okay, I'll play this 4 toughness creature. Oh, you're going to go Hero's Downfall it. I'll pay a blue mana and just counter it.
Apologize to people who don't know me. That is the robot litter box in the background.
You just know the cats did their business. Yeah.
So if you ever hear that again, that's a robot. I have lots of robots in my house. All right, let's continue.
Okay, so and it actually had a good fair number of Fate Reforged cards in there, because the cards that I really wanted to play was in Standard anyway, was Flamewake Phoenix. Did we talk about Flamewake Phoenix?
We did.
We did. Okay. Shaman of the Great Hunt, which I know we talked about that one.
Oh, I opened one of those. Yeah.
And then one of the ones I know we did not get to talk to because we ran out of time last week was Whisperwood Elemental. Whisperwood Elemental is a 4/4 for 5, so I think it's 3 green, that says, at your end step, manifest the top card of your library.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, on the turn you play it, you get a 4/4 and a 2/2 for 5 mana. Not too shabby. Then the other ability is say someone's going to wipe the board with either End Hostilities or Crux of Fate, the new one. You can sacrifice Whisperwood Elemental. Then for every non-token face-up creature that you have, you get to manifest the top card of your library. So they may be killing off 4 creatures, but you get to manifest the top 4, and who knows what those manifest cards are.
Yeah. I know a friend who's making a manifest deck, so that's going to be very interesting. But we can talk more about that in the Standard topic.
Topic, yes, absolutely.
All right.
But overall, FNM went 3-1 with the new deck. My loss was to Mono Green Devotion, which gets a lot of new tools that, again, we'll talk about when we get to the kind of new Standard format from this past week.
So let's just skip over Standard.
It's like, all right. So basically, yeah, Modern Legacy still working on my 2 Jeskai decks. And this week will be the first week that I will play with Monastery Mentor and Soulfire Grandmaster. So we will see how that goes, and we'll see how
it will go well. That is how that will go.
We'll see how broke I am by the end of the week too, because they're $30 a piece, and I know
already.
That was their coming out price was $30 a piece.
When on Friday they were $20.
Well, Soulfire, Monastery Mentor. Again, we'll get to this when we talk about the standard format.
Yeah, okay. We will talk about this later. All right.
But still very expensive cards either way. We'll just go with that. So it'll be interesting to see how they play this week with everything. So, well, Janelle, how was your week in Magic? I know for a fact
it was absolutely shitty because I didn't get to play.
Working?
Yeah, I've been working 13 12-hour shifts for the last week. I'm going on a second week of 13 12-hour shifts. I'm not playing Magic, and it's making me cranky.
Were you able at least to, because you told me that you, in lieu of playing any of the pre-releases, you were going to get a booster box.
I did buy a box. I got a Soulfire Grandmaster, a Monastery Mentor. I don't think I ended up with one Wild Slash. Like, fuck that card. I need more of that card.
Really? That's uncommon.
I need three more of those.
I would at least you thought you would have gotten probably close to a playset for uncommons.
Absolutely only one. That card is amazeballs. Oh my god, that card.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
And
so
Friday Night Magic, someone was playing Just Kai tokens or something like that.
No, we'll talk about it.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. You're trying to sneak a topic in there.
I am trying to sneak a topic. Okay.
All right.
So, but yes, Wild Slash is amazing. I will agree
Wild
with that.
Slash is amazing. I got my not in full playset, but I'm only running 2 of that blue Exile card, and I got the 2 I need.
Torrent Elemental?
No.
No. Reality Shift, sorry.
Reality Shift, thank you. Yeah, so I got the 2 of those, thankfully, because those are like $4.
Yeah, those
What is that? So that's ridiculous. But that card is so good.
It is.
So good.
It really is.
Two, I exile, you're like 6/6, and you get a 2/2.
Which could be even worse. It could be something like a mana dork or
likely no.
Or a land.
Anyway, it could be a land. Anyways, so I was very disappointed, but I did get my box. I got I'm missing a Monastery Mentor and 3 Soulfire Grandmasters, which is not bad. It's not good, but it's not bad.
No, I agree with that. It's like, did you get, because I know a lot of places run the buy a box promo for the day that
I did get the buy a box promo. That was $9 on release. I was very pleased to get my hands on that.
What was the buy a box promo again?
I don't know. It's 2 green, 3 colorless. Somebody wanted it for EDH. I don't remember what it did. I gave it to an EDH. I traded with an EDH player, so we're not going to see it in standard. It's
okay.
Yeah, it's not a standard card. All right, so that's what I did. All of nothing.
Well, hopefully the work will slow down and you get to play some for.
On the flip side of things, I did get to play casual on Sunday. I played Tiny Commander. Tiny Commander's amazing.
Oh, Tiny Commander.
Tiny Commander. Because in the span of 2 hours, which is 1 Commander game, we played 4 Tiny Commander games.
Now, were y'all playing the same way as Commander with 4 people, or were you just doing head-to-head?
There were 3 people. Tiny Commander is a one-on-one format.
Yes.
Okay. So for people who don't know, Tiny Commander is a new format recently invented. Works kind of like Commander. You have your Commander card, and then you have 50 cards in the deck. Everything has to be a converted mana cost 3 or less. You can have only one-ofs of named cards, non-basic lands. And, you get 25 life, no commander damage. It's really, really fun, especially since I'm playing blue, and Cyclonic Rift has a converted mana cost of 2.
Mm-hmm, yeah. So
I can overload Cyclonic Rift in Tiny Commander and make people cry.
Yeah, and the X spells I would think in that format would be insane because you can use them for anything.
Converted mana cost 3. So if you're X, has to be 3. The X spells are terrible.
Really? I thought you could
absolutely terrible. No.
See, I thought you could cast it for more. It's just that the card itself had to be.
Nope.
Okay.
Overload, Strive, Bestow. Those are not converted mana costs.
Got it. Okay. All right. I was curious as to, I was like, okay, I wasn't certain how that worked, but all right. Well, that sounds interesting. Actually, I'm sort of working on a Tiny Leaders deck myself because I have a whole bunch of Merfolk cards from when I was playing Merfolk and Modern and Legacy. Fish. I'm playing Tiny Leader Fish. So
awesome. Yeah, I'm very pleased with Tiny Commander.
Well,
So,
excellent.
All right.
Excellent.
I got to do something this weekend. Yay! We're gonna get to the actual topics now, though. Because...
Yeah, since we've been wanting to jump to the topics, we might as well get to the topics now. So.
Well, we're starting with news. So,
okay.
The news that came out since the last show is the banned list. And, oh my gosh, like Will was saying, the pod player tiers.
Yeah, well, before we get to Modern, because there's a whole lot of stuff that...
Yeah, we're going to start with Vintage.
Yeah, Vintage. Treasure Cruise, now, Vintage, kind of a background to Vintage. As far as I know, I don't think there are actually any restricted or banned cards in Vintage. Everything
I do not believe so, no.
Everything is restricted, though.
Which
so
means you can have, I believe, a minimum of 2? A max of 2?
No, you can have 1.
You can have a max of 1. Okay.
1, yep. And typically the cards that are considered kind of the main restricted cards in Vintage is what you would consider the Power 9, which were 9 of the original most powerful cards in Magic. It was Ancestral Recall, the Moxes, stuff like that. All those are considered restricted. Well, since Treasure Cruise is basically Ancestral Recall after you double away your graveyard, of course Treasure Cruise gets restricted in Vintage. But hey, now you're at least allowed two Ancestral Recalls in Vintage, technically.
Yeah. So Treasure Cruise is now restricted in Vintage.
Gifts Ungiven is no longer restricted.
Right, I was about to say Gifts of the Ungiven is no longer restricted.
Right, and I say actually, and this is a card that I've played against it in Modern and stuff like that, and this card alone can do some pretty broken stuff because you can search up to 4 cards and reveal them, and target opponent chooses 2 of these cards, put the chosen cards into the graveyard, and the rest into your hand. A lot of reanimator strategies in Modern especially kind of like to use this as a way to say, okay, well, I'll choose to take the nothing cards. You'll obviously choose to give me nothing and put the other 2 in my graveyard.
Yeah.
And
we don't need to go too into depth about.
No. Okay, so all right, so going on to Legacy. Of course, again, the cards that are actually typically banned in Legacy, there's a whole list of those. And again, going back to the Power 9, the Power 9 is banned in Legacy, so again, it's not much of a surprise. Treasure Cruise, as another Ancestral Recall, is banned in Legacy.
But what was really surprising is World Gorger Dragon is no longer banned.
Yeah.
So, Legacy is about to see some fucking insanity with this card. There's going to be all sorts of crazy decks.
Well, do you know
coming back?
Do you know the main combo with World Gorger?
I heard it and I forgot it. So why don't you remind me?
Okay. In Reanimator strategies, there are multiple ways to put stuff into your graveyard. And there's one particular spell called Animate Dead, which is an enchantment. It enters the battlefield. You choose a target in the graveyard and bring that target onto the battlefield. So here's essentially what happens. You animate Dead, naming World Gorger Dragon. World Gorger Dragon comes in. World Gorger Dragon says whenever he enters the battlefield, exile all other permanents you control. This would include the Animate Dead.
I see. Okay.
And so when the Animate Dead leaves, he goes back to the graveyard. Then everything comes back. Then you have Animate Dead again. Basically what you can do is while all these triggers are on the stack, every time your mana comes back, you could tap your mana to essentially give yourself infinite mana.
I see. Okay.
To cast whatever. The only problem that you can run into this with is if you have nothing else to eventually reanimate in the graveyard, the game could actually end in a draw because it's an infinite loop where you can't do anything and you never can pass priority. You can never.
Oh wow!
They never get another turn, which is the reason why it was initially banned to begin with.
Is you take all the turns.
Yes, because it's a draw, and you just go on to the next game essentially. So, but I'm assuming they think that this is no longer, especially with all the new graveyard hate and everything else, that this is no longer as big a threat as it was one time in Legacy. So that's why they are bringing it back.
Yeah, they said that they're looking for some new combos with some new cards that came out recently, and I'm going, yeah, sure, whatever. This card's getting banned again next time. So, all right, now where the real hurt came in, that was in Modern. Modern lost not just Treasure Cruise, but Dig Through Time and Birthing Pod.
Well, let's start with the ones that we kind of all saw coming to begin with before we get into the Birthing Pod argument. Again, Treasure Cruise is an ancestral recall. For all practical purposes, it's a Power 9 in Modern. It had to go. Now, the one that actually surprised me a little bit of the three was not Birthing Pod, because Birthing Pod has been on their sites for a while. It was actually Dig Through Time. Because I honestly thought that, looking at the top 7 and taking 2 cards for 2 mana, it was not the worst effect in the world. It is like, I thought that it's something that could definitely be played around. However, their reasoning, and if you go to the official announcement, they actually go down and say, essentially what would happen is you get rid of Treasure Cruise, then Dig Through Time will just become the replacement for that, and the modern meta game will not, become basically what it is right now. And they never want, especially with Modern, they never want the meta game to become stagnant. So they say, you know what, we'll go ahead and do Dig Through Time as well. So I'm sort of sad to see the Dig Through Time go, but I'm not 100% surprised at it either.
No, and I liked the reasoning where if we're going to ban one, we need to ban the other. At the same time, I felt really bad for the Delver decks, but, hey,
I would say
Magic.
I feel bad for the red-blue Delver decks. I personally think, and this is the reason why I'm going Jeskai Delver, is I think there's enough tools, especially in the new set, Monastery Mentor, that can make a viable Delver deck.
Yeah, but the real surprise, I think, for everybody was Birthing Pod.
Well, it's like Birthing Pod is a tough call. I'll be honest, because is it format warping? Not really, if I'm being completely honest on it, because there are so many things that can stop a Birthing Pod. A Pithing Needle can stop a Birthing Pod. A Graft Digger's Cage can stop a Pithing Needle, or stop a Birthing Pod. Anything that basically, shuts down you can destroy it as an artifact.
Mm-hmm.
However,
still, there were so many Birthing Pod decks, and there weren't so many other aggro decks. You're running aggro, you're probably running Birthing Pod.
Right.
And it can be run with any color combo?
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
Because the way Birthing Pod works is you sacrifice a creature, you go into your deck and search for a creature that with the same mana cost plus 1. So the recent example that everybody likes to do is to take a Kitchen Finks, which is 3, sacrifice it to Birthing Pod, and go get a Siege Rhino.
Yeah.
It's like that was sort of because, and in that process, because the way that Kitchen Finks work, Kitchen Finks has persist, so that when it dies the first time, it comes back on the battlefield with a -1/-1 counter on it. Mm-hmm. So essentially, what you're doing is in the process, you're gaining about 6 life and damaging your opponent for 3 with the Siege Rhino trigger. And again, Wizards' reasoning behind this, I actually sort of agree with. It's because they're saying the fact of the matter is, with every new set that's released, they release more powerful cards. This last set, it had Siege Rhino. Siege Rhino is an amazing...
It's ridiculous!
It's an amazing card for 4 mana. And with this quote-unquote, power creep is probably the best term they use. I don't know if
that's exactly the term. It is a power creep. Shit is getting stronger. Modern and Legacy can't quite handle it.
I say, well, especially Modern. Yeah, I'm reading this directly from the statement. Each year, new powerful options are printed, most recently Siege Rhino. Over time, this creates a growing gap between the strength of the Pod decks and other creature decks. Pod won 5 of the 12 Grand Prix over the past year, including winning the last 2. So, yeah, they're basically admitting that Birthing Pod is allowing you to use these more powerful creatures easier. Because, to be honest, without Birthing Pod, I don't know how viable a 5-drop or even a 4-drop is in Modern. I really don't.
And I don't know at all, because I don't play Modern.
It's like, because, there are better exile spells in Modern as well. For example, Path to Exile. Mm-hmm. 1 mana, I can get rid of pretty much anything that you have. as long
Yeah.
as it's not hexproof.
So,
So-
all in all, they were trying to fix the format, and people were so mad. I can't believe how mad people were.
Well, I would say the initial outcry was even shocking for me. I was like, because first of all, the first thing in my mind was, they've been talking about this for a while. This is not the first time that people have talked about banning birthing pod. Pretty much every time a banned or restricted announcement comes up, they talk about birthing pod in Modern as being a possibility. And I
Because
think
it's so played and so powerful.
so played and so powerful, right? And I do feel bad for the Modern players, even though I poked a little fun at them in the beginning. I do feel bad for them because they have legitimately spent a lot of money on these decks. Every year they're usually having to get whatever the most powerful new creature is to put it in. I mean, Siege Rhino, thankfully, just because Constant Tarkir was so widely open, is not that expensive. But 2 years down the road, if you're trying to get a Siege Rhino, good luck.
At the same time, as a standard player, this just happens. Stuff phases, you need a new deck, the format changes. It's
does.
Magic. That's how it works.
And the other interesting argument that I've heard from people is, even in Legacy, going a little bit back to the Treasure Cruise argument, but a lot of these arguments go into the Modern argument as well. Is, well, there's this other card that is just as powerful. Why is it not banned?
Because it's not being played.
Well, even if it is being played, for example, in Legacy, and actually, I'm going off of, I think this was a Patrick Chapin article about the birthing pod ban, and he said, essentially, or it may have been on his podcast too. I'm not 100% certain where I heard this, but he said that because the fact that the next Pro Tour, which is the weekend of February the 7th, the next Pro Tour is Modern. They do not want this to be the Delver Pod Pro Tour. Essentially, if that was the possibility, then if there was no Pro Tour with Modern, chances are Birthing Pod would never have gotten banned. Treasure Cruise probably still would have, just because of the effect, but Dig Through Time probably would not have. And just because it's going to be on that big of a stage, they want to show that, hey, the Modern format is not, these two decks,
Well, of course that's what they want to say, and what's wrong with that? I
There's
see
nothing.
nothing wrong with that. We don't want any of the formats to be just a couple decks. That makes the game incredibly stale. It's going to die very quickly if the only way you can play Magic and win at Magic is to play Birthing Pod or Delver. That's boring. That is incredibly boring.
And if they wouldn't have been Treasure Cruise, and if they banned Treasure Cruise and Dig Through Time and did not touch Birthing Pod, what would essentially happen is, what you would have almost the true definition of format warping is, you're either playing Pod or you're playing a deck specifically meant to beat Pod.
And again, that's boring.
That's not a good format. That is not a healthy format. Just for an example of kind of where Modern is essentially after this ban, Star City Games, along with their Standard Open, which we'll talk about that in a second, but they also run a Premier IQ that is Modern on the Sundays. I'm not gonna go into each of these decks, but I just want to go through and tell you the top 8. It was won by Auras, which is also kind of known as Boggles, was the number 1 deck. Abzan Midrange, so Siege Rhino was still there. Abzan Midrange won 2nd. Zoo won 3rd. Storm won 4th. Green Red Tron won 5th. Storm won 6th. Jund won 7th. And Affinity won 8th. So in the top 8, you have 6 different decks. If this was 2 weeks ago, it would have been Pod, Delver, Pod, Delver.
Yeah.
That's how it would have been. But even in no more than 1 day from when the bannings took place, we're seeing a new Modern format that, you don't have to play Delver and you don't have to play Pod.
And that's the way Magic always has to be, or people are going to start playing. It's the same way video games go the same way. Magic games go this way. Other trading cards go the same way. When you get down to a lock between you play this deck or you lose, the game becomes stale and people stop paying for it. Yeah, it's going to go for a while. These cards are going to get expensive, but 5 years down the line, no one's going to play Modern anymore.
Yeah, if they're not constantly shifting it. And see, the other thing is, for the most part, 9 times out of 10, when banned and restricted announcements come out, they very rarely touch vintage, and they very rarely touch legacy. The reason why is there's such a card pool that you can come up with a new strategy all the time.
Yeah.
Now, when you have something like Treasure Cruise, again, for legacy, you have to ban it. Unfortunately, that's the way that the world works. But even legacy, they kept dig through time because they know there's enough answers out there for dig through time anyway.
Yeah.
All
right, so we're gonna make that enough of the banned list. Sorry, pod players, deal with it.
What do we want to talk about?
I'm such a mean person.
The one unbanning really quickly in Modern?
Oh yeah, we do want to talk about that. I'm sorry, I totally forgot.
Golgari Grave Troll is no longer banned. Now, what impact this will have on Modern? I think the Pro Tour will be the answer to this question. And honestly, I don't know the answer. It is like, because without having the card Dread return, which is the thing that makes Legacy Dredge work, I don't know. I'm assuming there's going to be people who are going to be playing graveyard decks, which is what the Golgari Grave Troll is meant to be used in. Is to dredge 6, get deeper into your deck to find your threats. But I don't think I don't think this is going to have a big impact. Right now, I think they're selling for like $10, and I think that's too high. It's like I don't think we're going to see the type of play out of this card unless someone just comes up with a really broken deck around it.
I don't know. I could see this being very interesting, but format breaking, no. Which is why I think that's a good thing they unbanned it.
Right. Oh, I think so. And I think it actually will open up a few more graveyard-type archetypes, like Dredgevine is a modern deck. Is like, I think we'll see some more Dredgevine, and that, who knows, it may be the most popular deck. I don't think so, just because how easy it is to shut it down with a Rest in Peace, but, or so much graveyard hate that's out there. But it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, so we'll see how this goes, and all in all, this podcast is for the bannings. At least that sounds like to me. Yeah, Will?
I would say yes. Like,
all right.
I don't...
So if you don't like our opinion, you can email us.
Yeah.
awcpodcast at gmail.com, and you can totally yell at us.
Yeah,
that's fine.
And especially from Birthing Pod players, I definitely would like to hear some of your arguments as to why it wasn't banned. Don't go on to change.org and put a petition up for the U.S. government to see. Just, email us. Tell us why you. Trust me, it's a better use of your time and resources. So.
All right. So next, we're going to talk about our new standard format. Oh my gosh, stuff changed in standard.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I'm sort of surprised at how much Fate Reforged has already changed standard, because literally from the Thero set, which was the set before, literally I think the only card that has made an impact in standard at that time was Corsair Crufix, which is, yes, that's a big card, but it's still not insane by any stretch. So let's see. So Star City Games this weekend had it open in Washington D.C. and they a lot of people are still very confused from what I've been seeing about the new open format. So basically, Star City Games is moving to the Grand Prix format, which is you have a day one on Saturday. You have to have a record generally of 7-2 or better to go to day 2. And then day 2 you play out till you cut to your top 8 after additional 6 rounds. That's basically the way that the new formats are working. So, but it was standard, so we got to see the first use of the Fate Reforged cards in standard format. And do we just want to start off with the winner, since I want to talk about his deck anyway to begin with? So
yeah.
Okay. The SCG Open in Washington D.C. was won by Gerard Fabiano, who is actually kind of one of the staple players on the SCG circuit, and actually he's been on a tear recently. I'll be honest. It's like he won a Grand Prix in Baltimore. He came in second place at the Players Championship for Star City Games, and now he won the Standard Open in Washington. So it's about a span of 2 months. He's had quite a run, to say the least. So to talk about his deck is a Sultai control deck, and it's very interesting. In the main deck, really the two main things that I want to talk about are kind of the two new cards from Fate Reforged. As a control deck, he is running Ugin, the Spirit Dragon, as his kind of topper of his curve. Which again, I don't think we talked about Ugin last week yet either. But again,
that's because we weren't super impressed by Ugin, but we like him.
Well, I like him the way that Gerard Fabiano has him here, which I've always said Ugin is a control matchup finisher. He's a control deck finisher. He is the person who will basically shut them out of the game, and you can slowly kill him, doing 3 damage to him. If you try to put anything on board, you can minus it.
Ugin definitely allowed the control decks to return to the standard format, which we had not seen so many of them previously, but Ugin's bringing them all back.
Yeah, Ugin is going, and generally also kind of stepping back 1 second from the entire thing. Generally, when a new format comes out, aggro decks reign supreme at the beginning of a new standard, and control slowly catches up while it tries to figure out how to deal with the threats. So one, I'm very impressed that he won with a control deck week 1 out. Mm-hmm. Essentially, that alone was great. But that he was also able to incorporate Ugin, and then he also, since he doesn't have access to white and Sultai, he's playing Crux of Fate, the new board wipe that says kill all dragons or kill all non-dragons.
Fucking hate that card.
Yeah. Then in the sideboard, the 2 really interesting cards, new cards that he has one, Silumgard, the Drifting Death, which again, this is a card that I think we sort of both poo-pooed a little bit on last week when we said the Sultai dragon was just a poor dragon, the legendary dragon.
Wait, again, what dragon? What?
Silumgard, the Drifting Death. He is...
Oh, in his sideboard. Good
in his
Lord.
Sideboard.
Okay.
in his sideboard. Again, Silumgard is actually perfect for a control deck. Because Elspeth does not kill him because he's not at least 4 touches.
Oh, yeah, he deals with all the tokens.
Yep.
He totally shuts down red deck wins. This
does.
card hits the field and red deck wins. It's like, well, let's go.
Yep, it's like, I'm done.
That's game.
Done.
I'll see you later. Red-white tokens, they're going to do the same thing. That's it. Game over.
And there's nothing, and really, honestly, there's nothing a whole lot you can do with him because he's hexproof, so you can't target him. So really, it's board wipe or bust. And,
Or somehow hit him for 7. Yeah.
Or somehow hit him for 7, yeah. Maybe a monster Stormbreath Dragon, I don't know. That's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah.
But, then the other card that he included was a card that, we didn't get to talk about, but this was one of the cards that I know for a fact was on my original list. Tasigur, the Golden Fang.
Oh, yeah, that was on the list. We ran out of time last week, like we're running out of time this week.
Yep. Tasigur is amazing. With the potential to delve for 1 mana, it's a 1 mana 4/5 for all practical purposes. Let's just call it what it is. It's a 1 mana 4/5. With the ability to activate his ability for 2 Simic, which is green, blue, essentially. You put the top 2 cards of your graveyard into your library, then your opponent gets to choose which non-land card you get back from your graveyard.
The opponent's like, well, which card do I want to pick? Will screw me the least.
Well, at one of the matches that he had on camera, here was the opponent's choices. He had Thoughtseize, Sultai Charm, or what was the other thing he had? I think it was like an Ugin, I think. Like that was the choices to bring back, because when he cast Tasigur, you can dump away all the bad stuff, and you essentially have,
I said,
you can dump away all the bad stuff to make it where they're only giving you something really good in return. So, and he had a couple enablers of this as well. He had Rakshas's Secret, which is kind of a sort of a different type of a delve strategy, but overall, I think this deck was very impressive for week 1. With some of the interactions that he had, including Satyr Wayfinder, stuff like that, to definitely help power out some of this stuff, and to basically end a match for an opponent relatively quickly.
Yeah. I was very impressed when I have another friend who's built this deck in response to Ugin coming out, and he was like, I'm playing Sultai Control. And I was just very impressed. It's good. I don't like it.
Yeah, it's not fun for anybody else, but it's fun for.
Yeah.
It's a really good deck.
All right.
So-
So let's move on to the next one. Tell people about some more changes in standard.
You want to just go straight down the list? Number 2 with red white aggro.
Sure.
The main reason I want to bring up this deck is this deck has Monastery Mentor. It does have a Soulfire Grandmaster in there as well,
but only one. Yeah.
but only one. But Monastery Mentor, this card can take over a game in a hurry.
Oh yes.
Yeah, just watching this game, even against Fabiano in the last in the finals of the Open, it was just amazing how much he could bring out relatively quickly. Now, of course, when it gets to the late game, Fabiano had all the control spells and everything else to screw all this that you're doing. But still, Monastery Mentor, really great. The other card besides Soulfire Grandmaster that's in there as well. He actually has quite a few spells in here but the one that I specifically want to talk about is Valorous Stance, which again, I don't think this was a card that was on either one of our lists last week.
It was not on the lists. No, it was not.
But it's pretty good.
Very good card. This definitely replaces a lot of, like, God's Willing. This card is better. This card is better than the other one colorless, one white. Puts a +1/+1 counter and gives a creature protection from a color of your choice. This card is better than both of those cards, which were definitely better.
I don't know if I'm ready to say God's Willing is worse than Valorous Stance.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I did not say saying something is worse than something else is like saying it's a bad card, right? Valorous Stance gives you the same options as God's Willing. Gives you protection. The only thing this Indestructible does instead of protection is you can't swing through stuff. Yeah, but in the multicolored format, you can't really swing through stuff anyways.
Yeah, not really. It was like
at one point in time, we were using God's Willing. I give Pro Black. I swing through all your junk and you cry. But people can't use God's Willing as much these days for that. So it prevents a board wipe. You know, for at least one creature, the creature you need to build your board up again. And then on top of that, if you need to destroy something big, you have that option. This card is amazing.
It is. It really, Valorous Stance, I don't want to call it a Doomblade, but it's probably about as close as we have to Doomblade in this format, I would say. Is like with the additional ability to be able to protect your own stuff. Yeah. Which is pretty good. Then the other card that I want to talk about real quick is Outpost Siege. There are actually a bunch of sieges, and actually one of the sieges we'll talk about is actually better even than this siege. But the main reason I want to bring the siege up is because the Khan's ability is essentially Chandra Pyromancer's 0 ability, which is exile a top card of your library. You can play it this turn if you have the mana, basically. Yeah. So, or if it's a land card or anything else. So, and that gives it to you every turn without having to activate it or anything else. So, really strong ability with that. But I can also see in a kind of a very token-esque strategy, I can see where the dragons would come in handy as well. Because, say they wipe your board, you can be like, okay,
You take 12.
You take 12, because that's how many tokens I had.
This is an anti-board wipe, exactly.
Yes.
So depending on what deck you're playing Sultai Control? Alright, I picked dragons? Let's do this!
and interestingly enough, in the sideboard, he actually has end hostilities, so he can technically trigger this himself if he gets in trouble.
Yep, or if he knows he has game with end hostilities. 12 tokens is 12 damage!
Yeah.
That's more than half your life, and I've seen plenty of red decks, especially the new red-white token decks, come out with 12 creatures in 2 turns.
Yep, and that's essentially what this deck is. This is, I mean, for all practical purposes, this is red-white tokens.
Yep. We're going to have to move on to get to Temur Ascendancy, because you really wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, I do. Okay, so the next one is one of the ones you want to talk about, which was the Sultai.
No, we're moving straight to Temur Ascendancy.
Oh, straight to Temur Ascendancy. Okay.
Yep.
All right, so let's talk about Temur Ascendancy. From the last standard format, we all knew how broken Jeskai was. Jeskai Ascendancy.
Oh, yes.
And what they actually found out was instead of trying to splash green into Jeskai to kind of break everything. In Modern and Legacy, they figured out the card Fate Stitcher, which is blue. They could essentially do the exact same thing that all the mana dorks were doing in the other one. However, in Standard, they just figured out, you know what's better? Just play a whole bunch of tokens and pump them all up to an insane level and swing for a game. So the original version of Jeskai Ascendancy combo, nobody was overly wild about. I don't think, because you're having to splash a fourth color essentially to make this combo go off. Temur Ascendancy combo is not the exact same thing.
So why don't you tell us about it?
Okay, so without having to go through each individual creature, the things that make this deck work are Temur Sabertooth, Voyaging Satyr, and Temur Ascendancy. Essentially what this deck is, this is a green devotion deck with a little bit of a constellation mechanic in there as well, because you are running Eidolon of Blossoms and Courser of Crufix. But again, those are not as important as what the other things are going on with the deck. I think this deck does have the potential to go infinite. Okay, so here's the way that it works. Essentially, you play Voyaging Satyr on turn 2 or 3. Then you play Temur Sabertooth. Temur Sabertooth has an ability on it that says, for 1 and a green, you may return target creature that you control to your hand. Temur Sabertooth gains indestructible until end of turn. Now, what Voyaging Satyr says is untap target land. And you're running 4 Nykthos in this deck. So you have a whole bunch of mana, essentially, with Nykthos. You tap Voyaging Satyr to untap Nykthos. Tap Nykthos again, add a bunch more mana. Then you use Temur Sabertooth's ability to pop Voyaging Satyr back to your hand. You use 2 of the mana to play Voyaging Satyr again. Now, you have to have Temur Ascendancy on board to make this work, because Temur Ascendancy says all creatures you control have haste, and that includes mana dorks, or ones with activated abilities like this. So, again, you still have a whole bunch of mana sitting in your mana pool. You use Temur Sabertooth's ability again, or you tap Voyaging Satyr to untap Nykthos. You tap Nykthos again for a whole bunch of mana. You bring it back to your hand. You basically repeat this, essentially. Mm-hmm. And what you can do is you eventually want to get to the point where you're casting a bunch of big creatures so that you can use Temur Ascendancy's ability that says every time a creature with power 4 or greater comes on the battlefield, draw a card. You want to get to the point where basically you have infinite mana and you can Genesis Hydra for your entire deck. And then the final piece of the combo is the Nylea, God of the Hunt. Down there, down at the there's only a 1 of in the deck. But when you Genesis Hydra for your entire, say you Genesis Hydra for infinite, essentially, you find Nylea, God of the Hunt. You put it on the battlefield. So you basically have an infinite with trample swinging on the opponent. Needless to say, that ends the game pretty quickly. So now there are a lot of things about this deck that I like better than the original Jeskai Ascendancy deck. One, there's actually a whole bunch of really great creatures that you're playing just regardless. You're playing Courser of Crufix, you're playing Eidolon of Blossoms, you're playing Pelucranos, you're playing, Arbor Colossus, Genesis Hydra. You're playing some really great cards to begin with that even if you don't have the Temur Ascendancy, you can just go into beatdown deck mode, essentially. It's just, it's like, I'll swing my 7/7
Hornet Queen? Yeah.
Or Hornet Queen, or whatever. It's like, there's a whole bunch of really nice, just efficient things that can be done with this deck that it's not necessarily just, okay, you have to have your mana dorks and you have to have all these other small pieces to make it work.
Yeah.
However, if you do get the combo, then it's a very interesting... Then it's game. It is like... So, I don't know how popular it's going to be. I do know this much, that a lot of places are selling out of Temur Ascendancy. The good thing is I bought a bunch of Temur Ascendancy when I was playing Standard, and my original Temur deck from Khans of Tarkir actually ran Temur Ascendancy, because I was like, well, okay, it's card draw and it's creatures with haste. How can I complain about this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it gets around a lot of the counter spell decks, like, I just forgot the Sultai control deck. Genesis Hydra can't be countered. Temur Ascendancy obviously can be. But with all the draw power you get, you can just go find another one.
Well, with Genocide it can definitely be countered, but the issue is the effect, the cast effect does go off.
That was what I meant. Yeah. So you can't stop Nylea from hitting the board.
Yeah, or a Hornet Queen. So like if you know that sometimes they may tip their hand a little bit first, because normally when I play against someone who's playing Genesis Hydra, normally I'll ask them, okay, go ahead and resolve your cast trigger first, because then I want to see what they get, and then I still have the opportunity to counter their Genesis Hydra on the back end of it. So, but in this case, if they're just ready to fire off that counter spell, you can go like, okay, I'll get Hornet Queen. Good luck on attacking through me. And then you can just set it up on the next turn to do the exact same thing, essentially. Yeah. So
I think this deck is definitely going to set up the format to be much more interesting. I am not really looking forward to it showing up at Friday Night Magic, but I think I can kill the player fast enough.
Yeah, and admittedly, that is my one concern with my current deck that I'm playing, is I don't know if it's fast enough to compete with this.
What it really needs in the sideboard is Wrath of God.
Yes, some sort of a wipe. But the fact of the matter is, they can do this all on their turn before you even get the response to wipe. However, I also saw a bunch of times, not necessarily this team or Ascendancy deck, but other ones that sort of peter out eventually to where, if they're not drawing their Genesis Hydra, eventually they're going to not make it.
Yeah.
And so,
but that's exactly why they have the Eidolon Blossoms, Courser of Krufix. I'm really surprised to not see Treasure Trues or Dig Through Time, because like you said, they have to have the Genesis Hydra to win. So wouldn't you think you'd want more draw power? Like, why Boon Satyr?
Well,
why not some draw power?
Well, Boon Satyr I can understand, because Boon Satyr is a enchantment creature, so in combination with Eidolon Blossoms, it will draw cards.
Okay, that's fair.
And so I can understand Boon Satyr. Plus, the other thing is also, in a worst case scenario, you can bestow Boon Satyr onto, say, an Arbor Colossus, or even onto a Hornet Queen, and you just have a a 6/3 Hornet Queen, with Death Touch, so flying Death Touch.
Combo decks are definitely tricky.
They are tricky. It's like, honestly, what I think this is going to lead to is, one, if this becomes a big part of the metagame, which it's sort of too early 1 weekend out to say yes or no, but if this becomes a big part of the metagame, I think you're going to see people trying to start boarding in enchantment destruction, whether it's destroying.
Oh, that's coming anyways. There's so many new enchantments that cannot stay on the board. All those Khans versus Dragons enchantments are so not allowed to stick around.
Yeah. So that, I think it's definitely coming. So it will. Don't be surprised to see more main deck artifact destruction. No, not artifact. Enchantment and destruction. Because you shut down Temur Ascendancy, you shut down the deck. You shut down, But again, that's sort of the reason why I like the deck, is because you don't need the Temur Ascendancy to go off. You have an Arbor. You have a 6/6 for 5. You have a.
You can aggro if you need to.
You have a 5/5 for 4. And you can still give them all trample with Nylea very easily.
Yeah.
So,
it's a good deck. We'll have to keep an eye out for it.
We will. We absolutely will.
All right,
how are we doing on time? Do we have time to talk about the ramp deck real quick?
No, we're done.
We're done? Okay.
Sorry, guys. We have a 1-hour show for you every week. We're not going to go over. Hopefully, that's not too long for you to listen to.
Every other week? Or do we want to
Every other week. Yes, I can verb.
Yes. This is like... So, yeah. Eventually, maybe on the next episode, we can talk about that deck a little bit, because I definitely want to talk about Frontier Siege.
We'll see next week.
As that Frontier Siege actually is causing me to change up my deck some too. But
I said, all the Dragons versus Khans enchantments. Screw the Siege cards.
Yeah, it's
Screw them.
Really, honestly, when 3 of them are easily playable.
Oh yes, they did. They did really well drawing up those cards, but I don't like any of them. So if you're thinking about running Standard this Friday, make sure at the least your sideboard has enchantment removal.
Yeah, it was and that's why I run. Well, I've run Destructive Revelry for quite some time, just because whip. It's I want to blow up whip, essentially. So, anything that allows me to blow up the Whip of Erebos, I'm okay with. But now they can hit Frontier Siege and Outpost Siege, the red one.
Oh, I was running it also for Jeskai Ascendancy, because screw that card.
Oh, Jeskai Ascendancy, Teamer Ascendancy.
Yeah.
Hell, you can go Corsair Crufix if you have to.
If you have to. If you absolutely have to. Alright, so thanks for listening to the Alternate Win Condition podcast this week. If you forgot, I'm Janelle, and that's
I'm Will. So let's see. Janelle, how about you go through your Twitter and
Yep,
blog
we
and
both
everything?
have Twitters. I am at Janaelle5, Janaelle, and the number 5. Our show Twitter is AWC Podcast. Will's Twitter is
At Redhawk Will.
And again, if you guys want to email us, tell us about how, we're wrong. That's fine. We're okay with that. And you can find it, awcpodcast@gmail.com. If you're looking for directly where to download the show from, where we are hosted by boltsnotbolt.net. That is our website. They're amazing. That's a great community available on Shut the fuck up. Available on Facebook. No, we're not going into my inability to say community. We're not talking about this.
Oh, but it was so funny last week.
Can't say community.
It didn't make it into the episode, but if you
it's on YouTube. It is on YouTube.
Actually, Lord. I guess we forgot to put this on here. We do need to mention we do have a YouTube channel, Alternate Win Condition. There's only one podcast up right now because this is only our episode. But
this is episode 2.
This is episode 2, so obviously there's only one. And you probably will not be getting the unedited version every week. So enjoy
ever again.
Ever again. So enjoy the unedited version of our episode 1 that's on there. But going back to boltsnatbolt.net, there's also a great way if you're looking to support the show. Boltsnatbolt works very closely with Puka Trade, which if you don't know a lot about Puka Trade, if you're a person who likes to trade Magic cards, or you have a whole bunch of Magic cards...
Who doesn't like to buy them a lot.
Or doesn't like to buy them a lot, or you have a whole bunch of cards that you really don't play with or don't need anymore, but you don't know exactly what cards you want to get back in return. Essentially what Puka Trade allows you to do, it allows people to set up lists of cards they want. You just put the list out there and they say, basically you're telling the entire world, hey, do you have this card? If you have this card and you're willing to trade it to me, the site sets a certain number of points that each card is worth. Of course, the more expensive cards, more expensive points. And then they will send it to you. They will send the card to you. You go onto their website, confirm that you have received the card, and then they will transfer some of your points to them. Or if you want to collect points to try to get something bigger, you can send out a bunch of cards that you don't use or don't play with to people who are looking for them, and you collect their points, and you can save up to something big, like an Ugin.
So all in all, the sites are really great, and like we said, you can support us by joining up with Puka Trade. So
yes, and the way that you help us out with this is on the boltsnatbolt.net website. There is a link on the website that says Puka Trade. It's on the front of the page. You click that, and it's actually to our referral link. You join up Puka Trade through that referral link, and you'll actually be helping us out.
Yeah, help us make this podcast.
Yes, absolutely.
So please do that. We'd really appreciate it. You can also find Will's blog over on bolts.bolt.net.
Well, yes. Force of Will comes out usually every Wednesday to Thursday. This week, I'm actually going to be talking a little bit more about my standard deck than I talked about here, as well as some of the changes based on this past weekend that I'm also making to it.
So you want to hear more Will's opinions, head over there. If you want to hear my opinions, well, you should probably follow me on Twitter because I really don't update my blog that often. But when I do, it's www.wordpress.com. Nope, that's not it at all. It's speckandmisdirect.wordpress.com. See how often I update that?
It's like she doesn't even remember the name of her blog. It's like tells you how frequently that gets updated.
So, but what does get updated every other week is my podcast, 5 Gaming Things.
Yes. Yep. A very, very enjoyable podcast. If you are a gamer at all, enjoy video games, video game news, stuff like that, I highly recommend it.
I have fun making it every week, just like I'm having fun making this week. So this podcast, every other week. I'm so good with the English tonight.
Yes, the English is strong. The English is strong with you.
Oh boy. All right. I think that's going to be the end of this.
Yep.
Thanks for listening.
Yep. Until 2 weeks from now.
Bye.